2 years after the mission that had changed the course of her military career, Sarah stood in the Pentagon briefing room facing the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The walls were lined with maps showing global military operations where her training program had made decisive impacts. Red pins marked locations where extreme-range precision techniques had been successfully employed. General Patricia Stevens, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, reviewed the operational reports spread across the conference table. Staff Sergeant Martinez, your training program has fundamentally altered how we approach high-value target elimination. The statistics are remarkable. Sarah maintained her military bearing despite the magnitude of the moment. Being summoned to brief the nation's highest military leadership was an honor she had never imagined when she first enlisted 8 years earlier. Ma'am, the success rate for extreme-range precision missions has increased from 15% to 78% since implementing standardized training protocols, Sarah reported. We've successfully trained over 400 snipers from 15 allied nations. General Stevens nodded approvingly. The strategic impact has been equally impressive. Intelligence estimates that terrorist recruitment has dropped by 40% in regions where these capabilities have been demonstrated. The psychological effect of extreme-range elimination has proven as valuable as the tactical results. Admiral Chen, Chief of Naval Operations, leaned forward with interest. Walk us through the recent operation in Southeast Asia. Our Navy SEAL team credited your training with enabling a mission that conventional wisdom said was impossible. Sarah referenced her briefing notes, recalling the details of Operation Silent Thunder. The target was a terrorist financier, meeting with weapons suppliers on a remote island. The only viable approach was from a distance of 2,650 meters across open water. Environmental factors included variable wind conditions and temperature gradients. She continued describing how the SEAL sniper team had applied techniques learned at her institute. They used advanced ballistic computers to account for the complex environmental factors and achieved successful target elimination without alerting the security detail. The mission prevented a significant weapons transfer that could have equipped terrorist cells for months. General Martinez, Army Chief of Staff, studied the global impact assessment. The program has exceeded all projections for operational effectiveness. However, we're facing new challenges as potential adversaries attempt to develop countermeasures. Sarah had anticipated this concern. Intelligence reports indicated that enemy organizations were changing their behavior patterns in response to demonstrated extreme-range capabilities. High-value targets were using more concealment, varying their schedules, and employing counter-sniper techniques. The adaptive response from our opponents was expected, Sarah replied. That's why we've incorporated advanced concealment techniques and rapid position changes into our training curriculum. We're also developing new equipment that extends effective range even further. The briefing continued for over an hour, covering operational successes, training developments, and future capability requirements. Sarah answered detailed questions about equipment specifications, personnel selection criteria, and international training partnerships. There's one more matter to discuss, General Stevens said as the formal briefing concluded. The President has approved a new Special Operations Unit specifically focused on extreme-range precision operations. We want you to command this unit. Sarah felt her breath catch as the magnitude of the offer became clear. Command of a specialized unit would represent the pinnacle of her military career and an opportunity to directly apply the capabilities she had spent 2 years developing. Ma'am, it would be an honor to accept this command, Sarah replied.
What would be the unit's primary mission and operational parameters?
General Stevens smiled, recognizing Sarah's immediate tactical thinking. The unit would consist of 12 sniper teams specially trained for operations at ranges beyond 2,500 meters. You'd report directly to Special Operations Command and deploy worldwide for high-priority missions. The new unit, designated as the Long-Range Precision Strike Team, would operate from a classified facility that Sarah would help design. The most advanced equipment available would be provided, including experimental rifles and ammunition systems that pushed the boundaries of ballistic science. 3 months later, Sarah stood in the command center of her new unit's headquarters, watching as her hand-selected teams conducted their final training exercises. Each sniper and spotter pair had been chosen from the top graduates of her training program, representing the absolute elite of military marksmen. Sergeant First Class Davis, her original spotter and now the unit's senior non-commissioned officer, approached with the day's training results. "Ma'am, Team 3 just achieved a successful engagement at 2,147 meters. That's a new record for the unit." Sarah reviewed the shooting data with satisfaction. The combination of advanced training, superior equipment, and carefully selected personnel was producing results that surpassed even her optimistic projections. "Outstanding performance," Sarah replied. "How are the teams adapting to the new rifle systems?" The unit had been equipped with prototype weapons that incorporated the latest advances in barrel technology, ammunition design, and optical systems. These rifles represented the cutting edge of precision shooting technology, designed specifically for extreme range operations. "The new systems are performing exceptionally well," Davis reported. "Accuracy has improved by 15% over our previous equipment, and the enhanced ballistic computers are dramatically reducing environmental calculation time." Sarah's radio crackled with an incoming message from Special Operations Command. "Falcon 6, this is Command. Priority mission tasking inbound. Prepare for immediate deployment briefing." Within hours, Sarah's unit received their first operational assignment. Intelligence had located a high-value terrorist leader, planning a major attack from a compound in hostile territory. Conventional assault would risk significant casualties, but the target's location made extreme range elimination possible. "Teams 1 and 2 will deploy immediately," Sarah announced to her assembled unit. "Target distance is estimated at 2,150 meters with challenging environmental conditions. This is exactly the type of mission we've trained for." The deployment proceeded with the precision that characterized all of Sarah's operations. Advanced intelligence provided detailed environmental data, building layouts, and target behavior patterns. The sniper teams would have a narrow window of opportunity to eliminate the target before he disappeared into an underground bunker system. As the helicopter carrying her teams disappeared into the night sky, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. A single mission that many had considered impossible had evolved into a revolutionary capability that was protecting innocent lives around the world. The radio crackled with Davis's voice from the field. "Falcon 6, this is Overwatch 1. On station and ready for mission execution. Target acquired." Sarah monitored the operation from the command center, coordinating with intelligence assets and extraction teams. The precision and professionalism of her unit represented the culmination of years of training and development. "Overwatch 1, you are cleared to engage." "Mission is a go," the response came seconds later. "Target eliminated." "Mission successful. Requesting extraction." Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction as she coordinated the extraction of her teams. Another dangerous terrorist leader had been eliminated with surgical precision, preventing an attack that could have killed dozens of innocent civilians. As her unit returned to base, Sarah considered the future of extreme-range precision operations. Advanced technology would continue improving capabilities, but the fundamental principles would remain unchanged. Careful preparation, superior training, and the courage to attempt the impossible when innocent lives hung in the balance. The mission that had started with Commander Thompson's skeptical assessment that no one can hit that had become proof that with proper preparation, advanced techniques, and unwavering determination, even the impossible could be achieved. Sarah's legacy would not be measured in the distance of her shots, but in the lives saved by her willingness to push beyond the accepted limits of what could be accomplished. 3 months after the mission that changed everything, Sarah stood before a classroom filled with the military's most elite snipers. Representatives from Army Special Forces, Navy SEALs, Marine Scout snipers, and Air Force Special Operations filled every seat. These were already highly skilled marksmen, but they had come to learn techniques that could push the boundaries of what was previously thought possible. The classroom was located at the newly established Extreme Range Precision Institute, built specifically to house the training program that had grown from Sarah's successful mission. Advanced ballistics computers, environmental monitoring systems, and the most sophisticated rifle systems available filled the facility. "Good morning," Sarah addressed the class. "I'm Staff Sergeant Martinez, and over the next 4 weeks we're going to explore the limits of long-range precision shooting. Some of you may have heard about the mission that led to this program. Today we're going to break down exactly how it was accomplished." She clicked a remote and the first slide appeared on the screen, showing a topographical map of the mission area. "The fundamentals of extreme range shooting haven't changed. What's different is how we apply those fundamentals when facing distances beyond 2,000 meters. Master Sergeant Jackson, a Marine with 15 years of sniper experience, raised his hand. Ma'am, most of us have been taught that shots beyond 1,500 meters become more luck than skill. What changed that calculus for your mission? Sarah smiled at the question. Preparation and environmental awareness. At extreme distances, factors that matter little at shorter ranges become critical. Air density, humidity, atmospheric pressure, even the rotation of the Earth affect bullet trajectory. She moved to the next slide, showing detailed ballistic calculations. For the mission in question, I had to account for a 36-foot bullet drop and compensate for wind drift of approximately 18 inches. But those were just the starting points. The students took careful notes as Sarah explained the advanced calculations required for extreme range shooting, temperature gradients, barometric pressure changes, and even the specific ballistic characteristics of individual bullets all played crucial roles. The equipment modifications were equally important, Sarah continued, displaying photos of her customized rifle system. Standard military rifles are excellent, but extreme range requires specialized components. Custom barrels, precision triggers, and optics designed specifically for long-distance work. Sergeant Williams from Army Special Forces studied the rifle specifications. What about ammunition? Standard military rounds must have limitations at those distances. Excellent question, Sarah replied. We used custom-loaded rounds with precisely measured powder charges and bullets designed for optimal ballistic performance. Each round was individually weighed and measured to ensure consistency. The training program Sarah had developed combined classroom instruction with extensive field exercises. Students learned to use advanced weather monitoring equipment, ballistic computers that could calculate complex trajectories, and shooting techniques specifically designed for extreme distances. The psychological aspect is equally important, Sarah explained during the third week of training. At extreme ranges, you have several seconds between pulling the trigger and seeing the impact. Maintaining focus and confidence during that time requires mental preparation. The class moved to the outdoor range, where targets had been set up at distances ranging from 2,500 to 2,500 meters. Each student would attempt progressively longer shots, learning to apply the techniques they had studied in the classroom. Lieutenant Commander Phillips, a Navy SEAL sniper, lined up his first shot at 2,000 meters. Sarah knelt beside him, providing guidance on scope adjustments and environmental compensation. Remember, at this distance, your breathing and heartbeat affect accuracy. Find your natural respiratory pause and fire during the calm moment between heartbeats. The shot rang out across the desert training range. Through spotting scopes, instructors and students watched the bullet's flight path toward the distant target. After what seemed like an eternity, dust kicked up near the target, indicating a near miss. Excellent shot, Sarah encouraged. You were approximately 6 inches low and 4 inches right. That would have been a solid hit on a human-sized target. Let's adjust your scope and try again. Over the following days, each student gradually extended their effective range. The combination of advanced equipment, sophisticated calculations, and refined techniques allowed marksmen, who were already highly skilled, to achieve accuracy at distances they had never attempted. Captain Morrison from Air Force Special Operations achieved his personal best with a successful hit at 2,300 meters. I never imagined I could make a shot at this distance, he said, examining his target through binoculars. The level of precision required is incredible. Sarah nodded approvingly. What you've accomplished here demonstrates that extreme range precision shooting is a skill that can be taught and learned. It's not magic or luck. It's the application of scientific principles combined with solid marksmanship fundamentals. The success of the training program attracted attention from international military forces. Allied nations sent their top snipers to learn the techniques that had proven so effective. The classroom that had started with 20 American soldiers now hosted students from 12 different countries. Major Thompson, recently promoted after the success of Operation Desert Strike, visited the training facility to observe a graduation exercise. Martinez, what you've built here is remarkable. We're seeing applications of these techniques in operations around the world. Sarah watched as her latest class of students attempted their final qualification shoots. Each marksman was required to demonstrate proficiency at distances up to 2,200 meters under various environmental conditions. The pass rate was impressive, with over 80% of students successfully completing the advanced training. The real test isn't here on the training range, Sarah replied. It's when these techniques save lives in actual operations. That's when we'll know the program is truly successful. Intelligence reports from recent operations validated Sarah's confidence. Sniper teams trained in extreme range techniques had successfully eliminated high-value targets while minimizing risk to friendly forces. The psychological impact of these capabilities was forcing enemy organizations to change their operational patterns. There's something else, Thompson continued. Command wants to expand the program internationally. Our allies are requesting similar training for their special operations forces. Sarah considered the implications of teaching these techniques to foreign military units. Carefully selected allies could benefit from improved capabilities, but the knowledge could also be dangerous in the wrong hands. I think we could develop a modified program for international students, Sarah suggested. Focus on the fundamental techniques while maintaining operational security for our most advanced capabilities. The graduation ceremony for Sarah's 5th class took place on a crisp desert morning. 24 students from various military branches had successfully completed the most challenging sniper training program ever developed. Each would return to their units carrying knowledge that could prove decisive in future operations. Colonel Hayes, now serving as the Institute's commanding officer, addressed the graduating class. The techniques you've learned here represent the cutting edge of military precision shooting. Use this knowledge responsibly and remember that every shot you take in combat carries the weight of protecting innocent lives. Sarah stood before the assembled graduates, feeling pride in their accomplishments and responsibility for the knowledge she had shared. You came here as skilled marksmen, she told them. You leave as practitioners of a capability that can change the outcome of entire operations. Use these skills wisely and never forget that precision and responsibility go hand in hand. As the ceremony concluded, Sarah reflected on how far she had come since that morning, when Commander Thompson had declared the mission nearly impossible. What had started as a desperate attempt to eliminate 3 dangerous terrorists had evolved into a comprehensive training program that was enhancing military capabilities worldwide. The helicopter touched down at Forward Operating Base. Apache amid a crowd of soldiers who had gathered to witness the return of what many were already calling the most successful sniper mission in modern military history. Sarah stepped off the aircraft still carrying her rifle case, and was immediately surrounded by her fellow service members offering congratulations and handshakes. Commander Thompson waited near the landing pad, his weathered face showing a rare smile. Behind him stood Colonel Patricia Hayes, the base commander, along with several officers Sarah didn't recognize. The presence of high-ranking officials suggested that word of the mission's success had already reached the highest levels of command. Martinez, Colonel Hayes stepped forward as Sarah approached. Outstanding work today. I've just finished a conference call with Pentagon leadership. They're calling this mission a game-changer for special operations capabilities. Sarah saluted crisply. Thank you, ma'am. The entire team performed exceptionally. Davis provided perfect spotting support, and our security element ensured we could focus on the mission. Colonel Hayes nodded approvingly. I've already spoken with your teammates. They've made it clear that your marksmanship was the critical factor in the mission's success. 3 targets at 387 meters in 8 seconds. The ballistics experts are having trouble believing it's even possible. The group moved toward the briefing facility, where Sarah would provide a detailed account of every aspect of the mission. Multiple recording devices were set up to capture her testimony for analysis by military strategists and training specialists. Before we begin the formal debrief, Colonel Hayes continued, I want you to know that this mission has already had immediate strategic impact. Intelligence reports that the terrorist organization is in complete disarray. Field commanders are abandoning their positions, supply networks are breaking down, and recruitment has stopped entirely. Sarah took her seat at the head of the conference table, still processing the magnitude of what had been accomplished. The elimination of 3 key leaders had created a cascade effect that was dismantling an entire terrorist network. Commander Thompson activated the recording equipment. This is the official debrief for Operation Desert Strike, conducted on November 3, 2025. Present are Colonel Hayes, Major Wilson from the Pentagon, Captain Rodriguez from Intelligence, and the mission participants. Sarah began her detailed account, describing every decision from the initial planning stages through the successful extraction. She covered the equipment modifications, ballistic calculations, environmental factors, and tactical considerations that had made the mission possible. The key factor was preparation. Sarah explained. We spent weeks analyzing weather patterns, studying target behavior, and rehearsing every aspect of the mission. When the moment came, everything had to be automatic. Major Wilson, the Pentagon representative, leaned forward with interest. Walk us through the actual shooting sequence. How did you manage 3 separate targets so quickly at that distance? Sarah pulled out her mission notes, referring to the precise timeline she had recorded. The targets positioned themselves in an almost perfect triangular formation, approximately 12 to 15 feet apart. This allowed me to engage each one without major scope adjustments between shots. She continued explaining the technical aspects of the shooting. At 2,387 meters, bullet flight time was approximately 2.8 seconds per round. I fired the first shot, worked the bolt, acquired the second target, and fired again. The second target was moving, but his movement was predictable and within my anticipated engagement zone. Captain Rodriguez took detailed notes as Sarah described the intelligence preparation that had made the mission possible. Your target identification was instantaneous. How did you prepare for that aspect? We studied surveillance photos for hours, Sarah replied. Each target had distinctive physical characteristics. General Kazim's facial scar, General Malik's height and build, General Hassan's distinctive uniform modifications. When they appeared in my scope, identification was immediate. The debrief continued for over 2 hours, covering every detail of the mission. Sarah answered questions about equipment performance, environmental challenges, and tactical decisions. The information would be used to develop new training programs and operational procedures for future long-range missions. One final question, Major Wilson said, as the formal session concluded. Military analysts have calculated that this shot sequence had a theoretical success probability of less than 15%. What gave you the confidence to attempt it? Sarah considered the question carefully. Honestly, sir, I didn't think about probability statistics during the mission. I focused on the fundamentals of marksmanship that I've practiced thousands of times. Steady position, proper sight alignment, controlled breathing, smooth trigger squeeze. The distance was extreme, but the principles remained the same. Colonel Hayes stood as the recording equipment was shut down. Martinez, I want you to know that this mission has attracted attention at the highest levels of government. There's already discussion about how to incorporate these techniques into advanced sniper training programs. Over the following days, Sarah found herself at the center of intense interest from military leadership. Ballistics experts arrived to analyze her rifle and ammunition. Training specialists wanted to understand her preparation methods. Intelligence officers sought her input on future operations. The impact of the mission became clear through intelligence reports from the field. The terrorist organization that had controlled a significant portion of the region was rapidly collapsing. Without their senior leadership, field commanders were surrendering or fleeing across international borders. Davis found Sarah in the equipment room, cleaning her rifle for what seemed like the 100th time since returning from the mission. You know, they're talking about making a training video about the mission. Hollywood couldn't have written a better script. Sarah looked up from her cleaning. I'm more interested in the operational impact. Intelligence says civilian casualties in the region have dropped by 70% since the mission. That's what really matters. The Pentagon wants to replicate the mission profile for other operations, Davis continued. They're asking if we'd be willing to train other sniper teams for similar missions. Sarah considered the implications. If the techniques and procedures they had developed could be taught to other teams, the military would have a new capability for eliminating high-value targets without risking large numbers of troops. Commander Thompson entered the equipment room carrying a manila folder. Martinez, I have your next assignment if you're interested. Sarah set down her cleaning rod and gave Thompson her full attention. What kind of assignment, sir? The Special Operations Command wants to establish a new training program for extreme long-range precision shooting. They want you to help develop the curriculum and serve as the primary instructor. Sarah felt a surge of excitement at the opportunity. Teaching other soldiers to achieve similar results would multiply the impact of her skills far beyond what she could accomplish as an individual operator. The program would be based here initially, Thompson continued, but you'd travel to other bases to train sniper teams across all service branches. Your mission success has convinced leadership that these capabilities need to be available to more units. Sarah looked at her rifle, thinking about the path that had led to this moment. Years of training, countless hours of practice, and one perfect mission had opened doors she had never imagined. Sir, I accept the assignment. If we can give other soldiers the tools to accomplish similar missions, we can save lives and protect innocent people more effectively than ever before. Thompson smiled and handed her the folder. I was hoping you'd say that. Welcome to the future of special operations, Staff Sergeant Martinez. Sarah's finger squeezed the trigger with deliberate precision. The rifle bucked against her shoulder, as the first round erupted from the barrel with a thunderous crack that echoed across the mountains. Through her scope, she watched the bullet's vapor trail streak across the morning sky toward the distant compound. First round away, she whispered, immediately working the bolt to chamber the second cartridge. Davis kept his spotting scope locked on the target area, counting the seconds until impact. At 2,387 meters, the bullet would take approximately 3 seconds to reach its target, traveling at over 2,800 feet per second. Impact in 2, 1. Davis held his breath. The first bullet struck General Kazim's center mass, the impact spinning him violently before he collapsed to the courtyard stones. The other two generals froze for a split second, confusion evident in their body language as they tried to understand what had happened. Alpha target down, Davis confirmed. Bravo and Charlie target still exposed. Sarah had already acquired General Malik in her crosshairs. The second target stood approximately 12 feet from where Kazim had fallen, his mouth open in apparent shock. Sarah controlled her breathing, settling the crosshairs on his chest before squeezing the trigger again. The second shot followed the first by exactly 4 seconds. Sarah worked the bolt smoothly, ejecting the spent cartridge and chambering her final round. Her movements were automatic, drilled through thousands of hours of practice until they required no conscious thought. Second round away, she reported, already shifting her aim toward General Hassan. General Hassan had begun to move, his survival instincts finally overcoming his initial confusion. He took 3 quick steps toward the nearest building, but his movement was predictable and within Sarah's anticipated target zone. Davis tracked the second bullet's impact. Bravo target down. Charlie target moving toward eastern building. Sarah's crosshairs found Hassan just as he reached the building's entrance. In another 2 steps, he would disappear inside and the opportunity would be lost forever. Time seemed to slow as Sarah's finger found the trigger for the third time. The final shot rang out 8 seconds after the first, completing the most remarkable display of long-range marksmanship in military history. Sarah maintained her sight picture, watching through her scope as the third bullet completed its journey across the vast distance. Third round away, she announced, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. General Hassan stumbled at the building entrance, struck by the third bullet just as he attempted to reach safety. He fell forward into the doorway, his body blocking the entrance for the confused guards rushing to assist. Charlie target down, Davis confirmed with barely contained excitement. All 3 targets neutralized. Time from first shot to last shot 8 seconds. The compound erupted into chaos as guards ran in every direction, shouting orders and seeking cover from an enemy they could not see. Some fired wildly into the mountains, their bullets falling far short of the actual sniper position. Sarah immediately began breaking down her firing position while Davis packed his spotting equipment. The sound of rifle fire would draw enemy patrols to their general area within minutes. Speed was now critical for survival. Base, this is Overwatch. Davis spoke into his radio for the first time since leaving camp. Package delivered successfully. Requesting immediate extraction at designated Point Alpha. Commander Thompson's voice crackled through their earpieces. Overwatch base copies. Outstanding work. Extraction bird is airborne. ETA to Point Alpha is 12 minutes. Sarah secured her rifle in its carrying case, ensuring the scope remained protected during their movement to the extraction point. The entire team had monitored the radio traffic and was already preparing to move out. Sergeant Kim took point again, leading the team down a different route than their approach path. Enemy forces would likely concentrate their search along the most obvious escape routes. The alternate path was longer and more difficult, but it avoided known patrol bases and observation posts. Movement in the compound, Davis reported as he conducted a final observation. Multiple vehicles departing in different directions. They're organizing search parties. The team moved quickly but carefully down the mountainside. Loose rocks and steep terrain made rapid movement dangerous, but they could hear vehicle engines starting in the distance. Enemy forces were mobilizing faster than anticipated. After 20 minutes of intense movement, they reached a small plateau where Kim called for a brief rest. Sarah checked her rifle again, ensuring that the rough movement hadn't damaged any critical components. Davis monitored enemy radio frequencies, listening for information about search patterns. "They're focusing their search to the north," Davis reported. "Intelligence suggests they think the shots came from the nearest high ground." "Our position selection was perfect." Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The mission planning had been meticulous and the execution had been flawless. 3 of the most dangerous terrorist leaders in the region had been eliminated in less than 10 seconds. The psychological impact on their organization would be devastating. "Helicopter inbound," Kim announced, pointing to a distant speck approaching from the south. 2 minutes to extraction point. The team resumed movement, covering the final half-mile to the designated landing zone. The helicopter pilot had selected a narrow valley that provided concealment from enemy observation, while allowing for a quick pickup. As they reached the extraction point, Sarah could see the UH-60 Blackhawk approaching at low altitude, using the terrain to mask its approach. The pilot demonstrated exceptional skill, navigating between steep canyon walls to reach their position. The helicopter touched down in a whirlwind of dust and rotor wash. The team rushed aboard, with Sarah carefully securing her rifle case before taking her seat. Within 30 seconds, they were airborne and heading back toward friendly territory. Commander Thompson's voice came through the helicopter's communication system. "Martinez preliminary battle damage assessment confirms all 3 targets eliminated. Intelligence estimates this will disrupt terrorist operations for at least 6 months. Sarah removed her helmet and rubbed her eyes, feeling the exhaustion that follows extreme adrenaline rushes. The mission had been successful beyond their highest expectations, but the reality of what she had accomplished was only beginning to sink in. Davis clapped her on the shoulder. "That was the most incredible shooting I've ever witnessed. 3 targets at nearly 2,400 meters in 8 seconds. They'll be talking about this mission for years." Sarah looked out the helicopter window at the rugged mountains below. Somewhere in that terrain, enemy forces were still searching for the ghosts who had struck from an impossible distance. The psychological impact of the attack would be as important as the physical elimination of the targets. "Command wants a full debrief as soon as we land," Thompson continued. "The Joint Chiefs are extremely interested in understanding how this mission succeeded. There may be applications for similar operations in other theaters." Sarah nodded, already mentally preparing her report. Every detail would need to be documented for future reference. The ballistic calculations, environmental conditions, equipment specifications, and tactical procedures would all be analyzed by military strategists. The helicopter crossed into friendly airspace as the sun climbed higher in the desert sky. Behind them, the terrorist organization was dealing with the sudden loss of their 3 most senior leaders. Ahead, Sarah faced questions about how she had accomplished what many experts had declared impossible. As forward operating base Apache came into view, Sarah allowed herself to think about the lives that would be saved because of this morning's work. 3 men who had orchestrated countless attacks against innocent civilians would never harm anyone again. For a soldier, there could be no greater satisfaction than protecting those who could not protect themselves. The alarm buzzed at 0300 hours, cutting through Sarah's restless sleep. She had managed only 4 hours of rest, her mind constantly running through ballistic calculations and wind adjustments. Every detail of the mission plan had been rehearsed dozens of times, but sleep remained elusive when facing such an enormous challenge. Davis was already awake when Sarah entered the equipment room. The spotter had arrived 30 minutes early to conduct final checks on their gear. Night vision goggles, rangefinders, weather monitoring equipment, and communication devices were laid out in precise order. "Morning. Sunshine," Davis whispered with a grin. "Ready to make history?" Sarah strapped on her tactical vest, feeling the familiar weight of ammunition pouches and emergency supplies. "Let's focus on making it home alive first. History can wait." The rest of the team assembled in the staging area at 0330. Commander Thompson reviewed the mission timeline one final time. Intelligence had confirmed that the target meeting was still scheduled for 800 hours. The team needed to reach the sniper position, establish their firing solution, and wait for the targets to appear. "Remember," Thompson addressed the group, "radio silence once you leave the wire. Davis will coordinate with base only for emergency extraction. Martinez, your call signs are Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie for the 3 targets." The team moved out under cover of darkness, using night vision to navigate the treacherous mountain terrain. Sarah carried her rifle in a specially designed case that protected the delicate scope adjustments from rough handling. Every step required careful consideration, as loose rocks could create noise that would alert enemy patrols. Sergeant Kim led the point position, using hand signals to guide the team around known patrol routes. Intelligence had mapped enemy movement patterns for the past 2 weeks, identifying gaps in their security coverage. The route to the sniper position required threading through 3 separate patrol zones without detection. After 2 hours of careful movement, the team reached the first checkpoint. Kim signaled for a rest break while he scouted ahead for enemy activity. Sarah used the opportunity to check her rifle, ensuring that the scope remained properly zeroed despite the rough journey. Davis knelt beside her, consulting the weather monitoring equipment. Wind conditions are holding steady at 7 miles per hour from the southwest. Temperature is rising faster than predicted, which will affect air density. Sarah nodded, making mental notes of the changing conditions. At extreme distances, even small environmental changes could drastically affect bullet trajectory. The warming air would be less dense, potentially causing the rounds to fly higher than calculated. The team resumed movement, navigating through a narrow canyon that provided concealment from enemy observation posts. The rocky terrain made footing treacherous, and progress slowed to ensure no one twisted an ankle or dislodged rocks that could alert nearby sentries. At 05:45 hours, they reached the designated sniper position. The location offered an excellent view of the target compound while providing natural concealment among large boulders and scrub vegetation. Sarah immediately began setting up her firing position, using sandbags to create a stable platform for her rifle. Davis established his spotting position 3 feet to Sarah's left, setting up the high-powered spotting scope that would allow him to observe bullet impact and provide corrections for follow-up shots. His rangefinder confirmed the distance to the target compound at exactly 2,387 meters. "Target compound in sight," Davis whispered into his throat microphone. Distance confirmed at 2,387 meters. Wind reading 7 miles per hour, gusting to 9 direction southwest. Sarah adjusted her rifle scope, dialing in the elevation corrections for the extreme distance. At nearly 2,400 meters, the bullet would drop approximately 36 feet from the bore line. She also adjusted for the crosswind, calculating that the bullets would drift approximately 18 inches to the right. The sun began to rise behind them, casting long shadows across the mountainside. Sarah's position remained in deep shadow, making detection from the compound nearly impossible. Through her scope, she could see guards moving around the courtyard, preparing for the arrival of the 3 generals. "Movement in the compound," Davis reported. "Multiple vehicles approaching from the east. This could be our targets." Sarah's heart rate increased as she watched 3 black SUVs enter the compound gates. Armed guards immediately surrounded the vehicles as passengers began to exit. Through her scope, she could identify several high-ranking officers based on their uniforms and the deference shown by other personnel. "Alpha target identified," Sarah whispered as General Kazim stepped out of the first vehicle. The intelligence photos had prepared her to recognize his distinctive beard and prominent scar above his left eyebrow. "Bravo target confirmed," she continued as General Malik emerged from the second vehicle. Davis adjusted his spotting scope for a closer view. "Charlie target there. Third vehicle, passenger side. General Hassan." Sarah felt her breathing steady as years of training took over. Her finger found the familiar curve of the trigger, though she maintained safe pressure until the moment of firing. The 3 generals walked together toward the center of the courtyard, discussing something with animated gestures. Distance holding at 2,387 meters. Davis provided continuous updates. Wind now 8 miles per hour, steady from southwest. Temperature climbing to 89 degrees. Sarah made minute adjustments to her scope settings, compensating for the changing atmospheric conditions. The warming air would indeed cause her bullets to fly slightly high, requiring a small reduction in elevation adjustment. "Targets are moving into optimal position," Davis observed. "They're grouping together near the fountain in the center of the courtyard." Through her scope, Sarah could see all 3 generals clearly. They stood approximately 15 feet apart, well within the margin of error for consecutive shots. Her breathing became controlled and rhythmic, each exhale steady and measured. "Security detail is maintaining perimeter positions." Davis continued his observations. "No immediate threats to target acquisition." Sarah chambered her first round, the distinctive click barely audible even to Davis beside her. The custom-loaded 338 Lapua Magnum cartridge contained precisely measured powder, charges, and a boat-tail bullet designed for extreme accuracy at long range. First round chambered. She confirmed quietly. Davis checked his chronometer. Target window opens in 90 seconds. Winds remain steady at 8 miles per hour. Sarah settled into her final firing position, her body forming a stable platform for the rifle. Her left elbow rested on a sandbag, her right shoulder firmly against the rifle butt. The bipod legs were adjusted to the exact height that provided optimal barrel alignment. 60 seconds to target window, Davis announced, Sarah's crosshairs centered on General Kazim's chest. At this distance, she aimed for center mass rather than attempting headshots. The larger target area provided better probability of success, and the powerful rounds would be immediately lethal regardless of impact location. 30 seconds. All targets remain in optimal position. Sarah's breathing slowed to match her heart rate. Years of training had taught her to fire during the natural pause between heartbeats when her body was most stable. Her finger took up the slack in the trigger, ready to break the shot at the precise moment. 10 seconds. Wind steady. Target stationary. Sarah's world narrowed to the view through her scope. General Kazim stood clearly in her crosshairs, unaware that death approached from nearly 2.5 kilometers away. Her breathing stopped as she entered the zone where time seemed to slow and every detail became crystal clear. Target window is open, Davis whispered. You have the shot. Sarah's finger applied steady pressure to the trigger, feeling the familiar resistance that preceded the rifle's firing. In seconds, she would discover whether months of preparation and years of training would be enough to accomplish the impossible. The desert sun beat down mercilessly on Forward Operating Base Apache, where Staff Sergeant Sarah Martinez cleaned her rifle for the 3rd time that morning. The weapon gleamed under the harsh light, every component inspected and ready. Around her, the base buzzed with nervous energy as soldiers prepared for what many believed would be a suicide mission. Commander Jake Iron Wolf Thompson stood before a group of 20 elite soldiers in the briefing tent. His weathered face showed the strain of leading men and women into impossible situations. Maps covered every surface marked with red circles indicating enemy positions deep in hostile territory. Listen up, Thompson's voice cut through the chatter. Intelligence reports confirm that 3 high-value targets will be meeting tomorrow at coordinates 34.5 north, 69.2 east. These aren't just any terrorists. General Kazim oversees their entire northern operations. General Malik controls their weapons supply chains. General Hassan runs their recruitment and training programs. The room fell silent. Every soldier knew these names. These 3 men had orchestrated attacks that killed hundreds of civilians and dozens of their fellow service members. Thompson continued, his finger tracing the map. The meeting location is a fortified compound built into the mountainside. Our satellite imagery shows concrete walls, guard towers, and at least 50 armed fighters. The only clear line of sight is from this ridge, approximately 2,400 meters away. A collective intake of breath filled the tent. Even the most skilled snipers rarely attempted shots beyond 2,000 meters. Wind conditions, bullet drop, and atmospheric pressure made such distances nearly impossible. Sir? Sergeant Rodriguez raised his hand. That's an extremely long shot. The variables alone make it almost impossible to guarantee accuracy. Thompson nodded grimly. I know. That's why we need our best marksmen for this operation. His eyes swept across the assembled soldiers. Martinez front and center. Sarah stood and walked forward, feeling every pair of eyes on her. At 28, she had already earned a reputation as one of the most accurate shooters in the unit. Her small frame often surprised people, but her steady hands and keen eye had saved countless lives during her 3 tours of duty. Martinez has the highest accuracy rating in our unit, Thompson announced. She's completed shots at distances up to 1,800 meters with a 96% success rate. Sarah felt the weight of expectation pressing down on her. She had trained for moments like this, but the reality of the situation was sobering. 3 shots, 3 targets, all within seconds of each other before the remaining guards could react and disappear. Commander, she spoke up, her voice steady despite her racing heart. What's the time window for the operation? Thompson pulled up another image on the projector. Intelligence indicates the meeting will last exactly 15 minutes. They'll be in an open courtyard for the first 5 minutes, then move inside the building. That's our window. The tactical challenges were enormous. Sarah would need to account for wind speed and direction at 2,400 meters. The mountain air would be thinner, affecting bullet trajectory. Most critically, she would need to fire 3 consecutive shots before any of the targets could take cover. The extraction point is here. Thompson pointed to a location 3 kilometers from the sniper position. Once the shots are fired, you'll have approximately 8 minutes before enemy reinforcements arrive. The helicopter will extract the entire team from this location. Sergeant Williams, a veteran of 12 years, shook his head. Commander, with respect, this mission requires too many variables to align perfectly. Weather conditions, equipment performance, human error. Any one factor goes wrong and we lose the entire team. Thompson's jaw tightened. I understand the risks, Williams. But these 3 targets represent the leadership of the entire terrorist network in this region. Taking them out could save thousands of civilian lives and protect our troops for years to come. Sarah studied the topographical maps spread across the table. The sniper position offered excellent concealment but required a grueling 6-hour hike through enemy territory. The team would need to move at night, navigate through known patrol routes, and establish the firing position before dawn. What's the weather forecast for tomorrow? She asked. Thompson consulted his notes. Clear skies, temperature around 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind speeds between 5 and 10 miles per hour coming from the southwest. Sarah ran calculations in her head. At 2,400 meters, a 10-mile-per-hour crosswind could push a bullet off target by several feet. She would need to compensate for wind drift, elevation changes, and the Coriolis effect from the Earth's rotation. Commander, I'll need my custom ammunition, Sarah said. The 338 Lapua Magnum rounds with the specialized ballistic tips. Standard issue won't maintain accuracy at that distance. Already arranged, Thompson replied. Supply has prepared 50 rounds to your exact specifications. The briefing continued for another hour, covering every detail of the mission. Escape routes, communication protocols, emergency procedures. Each team member received specific assignments. Martinez would be the primary shooter, with Corporal Davis as her spotter. 6 other soldiers would provide security and cover their approach and extraction. As the meeting concluded, Thompson pulled Sarah aside. Martinez, I need to be honest with you. Command estimates this mission has a 30% chance of success. The shot distance alone makes it nearly impossible. Sarah looked directly into her commander's eyes. Sir, I've been training for impossible shots my entire career. I understand the risks, but I also understand what's at stake. Thompson nodded slowly. I've seen you shoot, Martinez. If anyone can make this work, it's you. But remember, bringing your team home alive is more important than completing the mission. Don't take unnecessary risks. That evening, Sarah sat alone in her quarters, disassembling and cleaning her rifle one final time. The Barrett M82A1 50-caliber sniper rifle was a precision instrument, capable of delivering devastating accuracy at extreme distances. She had personally modified the trigger mechanism and mounted a specialized scope designed for long-range shooting. Her teammate Davis knocked on the door. Mind if I come in? Sarah gestured to the chair across from her. Davis had been her spotter for 18 months, and they had developed an almost telepathic communication during combat operations. You nervous about tomorrow? Davis asked. Sarah paused her cleaning routine. Nervous doesn't cover it. 3 targets, maximum distance, hostile territory. Everything has to be perfect. Davis leaned forward. I've been your spotter for enough operations to know you don't miss when it matters. Trust your training, trust your equipment, and trust me to give you accurate readings. Sarah smiled for the first time that day. I do trust you. That's the only reason I think this mission might actually work. Outside, the desert wind whistled through the camp, carrying with it the promise of tomorrow's challenge. Sarah continued her preparations, knowing that in less than 12 hours she would attempt the most difficult shots of her military career.